My Hero Academia is full of amazing, weird, and creepy powers in the shonen manga, and today we are going to discuss every single quirk in the whole series. We'll first start with My Hero Academia Vigilante. At number 1, we have Bat. The Bat is a mutant quirk that gives bat-like features to its user. Mutant quirks are like abilities that cause a permanent change in the user's body that is directly related to their power. In Yabayakawa's case, his quirk not only allows him to fly like a bat, strangely, he could also run at very high speeds. However, we have only seen this quirk under the effects of Boost. Now, what is a Boost? Boost is basically a drug that enhances a quirk to its max, which sounds great and all, but this thing has a huge drawback. You lose your sense of reason and aren't able to think properly. However, Yabayakawa doesn't stop there. He unlocked even more features after the Villain Factory turned him into a next level villain. His whole body became similar to that of a bat, which not only improved his physical abilities, but also allowed him to detect someone over long distances by smelling their traces. At number 2, we have Lizard. This mutant quirk gives Rapt a lizard-like appearances and gives him enhanced healing. Despite getting his bones smashed to pieces in Chapter 2, Rapt recovered more quickly than the rest of his friends. Things get more interesting when he's under the effect of Boost, because after taking that drug, Rapt becomes something similar to a pterodactyl and is able to fly unlike normal lizards. Speaking of flying, at number 3 we have Swan. Swan gives its user 2 large swan-like wings on their back. He can also fly with these wings, but there's a weird catch. He can only fly after stripping off all their clothes. We don't know much about its user except that he was a pervert who wanted to fly higher into the sky. At number 4, we have Mantis. That lets Kirihito do whatever a mantis can do. Now, in case you don't know, mantises are an apex predator. Things get even crazier when he's under the effects of Boost. He was not only tough enough for our protagonist, but he was also able to catch up to him, even though he was going as fast as a bike. Don't worry, we'll talk about him later in the video. At number 5, we have Control Horn, which gives its user a pair of horns which he can use to control cows. Cow Cowboy was able to control hundreds of cows at a time and even threatened to destroy a whole province of Japan if his demands weren't met. You know what's worse than a cow? A Big Monkey at number 6. Big Monkey is a transformation quirk that turns its user into a giant ape. Transformation quirk allows its user to temporarily transform their body in different ways. Another transformation quirk we have at number 7 is Bruiser. Bruiser allows the user to power up one of their limbs, which they can then use to unleash a powerful blow. And the crazy part is, the more time they take to charge up, the stronger the attack they unleash will be. Did you know even cats have transformation quirks? Let me tell you about the quirk we have at number 8. Monster Cat lets his user fuse with any object or machine and allows them to take complete control over it. The cat used this quirk in Chapter 17 to hijack a bus full of passengers. At number 9, we have Gigantic Spinning Flying Turtle. This transformation quirk lets Eiji Okameda perform an attack that's similar to Squirtle's Rapid Spin. The Wolverine fans in the audience would love this next quirk, because Spike at number 10 not only allows Soga to create spikes out of his knuckles, but also from other parts of his body. Under the effects of the Boost, Soga is able to transform into something similar to a porcupine, which gives his spikes enough oomph to crack concrete. However, if you're a fan of Godzilla, then we have Kaiju at number 11. Kaiju is a transformation quirk that lets Ryuichi turn into a Godzilla-like monster. Next at number 12, we have Eel. Eel is a transformation quirk that allows Teruo to transform into a medium-sized eel. Thanks to this quirk, Teruo becomes so slimy that any physical attack thrown at him simply slides off of his body. The only way to deal with this quirk is by throwing flour or similar substances on Teruo. This completely drains the moisture from his body and makes it possible to smack the life out of him. But things get entirely different when he's under the effect of the Boost. With Boost, Teruo turns into a very large electric eel, and it's an entirely different quirk, because it's no longer a transformation quirk, but instead a mutation quirk. Now, he's not only very slippery, but he can also unleash a huge amount of electricity. However, doing that also knocks him out, which means he can't spam those high electric shocks. Another dangerous mutant quirk we have at number 13 is Suicide Bomb. This mutant quirk lets its user create huge explosions that surround their body. It was used by a man known as Suicide Bomber, and that's all we know about this quirk. Next at number 14, we have Longleg. This transformation quirk is used by anonymous villains. It basically lets him extend his legs and gives him an unfair advantage at Road Rash. Playtime at number 15 turns Mario into a giant version of Four Arms. However, it also makes him stupid and causes him to act like a child who likes playing with his toy cars. And what do we do with such children? We smack them with the quirk we have at number 16, Fly Swatter. Let Shoko Himawari attack someone by sending energy waves. She mostly uses this quirk to smack her son from a distance, like a typical Asian mom. At number 17, we have Glide and Slide. This quirk is used by 3 Sturm and Drang brothers, and it lets them skate on roads without wearing roller skates. However, it only makes them quicker than a normal person, and doesn't match up to those speed quirks we're going to discuss later. I think it's time to tell you about a different quirk category. At number 18, we have an emitter quirk, Beams from his eyes. Emitter quirks basically allow the user to generate or control certain things. Some of these quirks are so overpowered that they can even change the environment, but we'll get to those later. First, let's talk about Beams from his eyes. As the name suggests, this quirk allows the user to fire a concentrated laser beam from his eyes. He can fire an even larger blast from his eyes. Now, we don't know how dangerous it is, but after seeing that, I don't want to get hit by it. Ignition at number 19 grants fire abilities to its user and creates a small flame on top of their head. This lets Mario exhale powerful concentrated fire through his mouth. And after using Boost, this flame grows even stronger and covers his whole body. If you have this quirk, then you won't have to worry about what we have at number 20. Wooden Swords from his hands is an emitter quirk that lets Jube create wooden swords from his wrists. And if you want a quirk that lets you away from danger, then at number 21 we have Leap. Leap is a close-range emitter quirk that lets Kazuo jump very high and very far. And the best part is, she doesn't suffer from fall damage when she's using the quirk. Another quirk that lets you jump high is Grasshopper at number 22. This quirk is used by Hata brothers. They often use this quirk to distract their enemies by jumping over them. Next at number 23, we have Soccer that allows Yotsura to dribble the ball like Messi. The only difference is he uses this quirk to steal from people, and if you're a Ronaldo fan, then don't worry, because this quirk also lets Yotsura shoot so hard that it can send his opponents flying into the air. Now, the quirks after that are spoilers for those who haven't read the My Hero Academia Vigilante, so anime-only guys can just skip to number 45. As for manga readers, let's move to number 24, where we have Squid. Squid is like a mutant quirk that gives Ikajiro 8 limbs, along with 2 extra tentacle-like arms that are hidden in his torso. Thanks to those extra arms, Ikajiro was able to catch Aizawa off guard so badly that Aizawa was 1 punch away from death. Diesel Engine at number 25 is another mutant quirk that turns Willy Wonka's head and their whole upper body into a diesel-powered train. We have a similar quirk at number 26, Tank Engine. Just like Diesel Engine, Tank Engine turns Tommy's whole upper body into a steam-powered train. Propagation at number 27 allows the Cluster Bomber to duplicate their body multiple times to increase their size. The bomber used this quirk to grow 3 times their original size, which as a result caused an explosion that was 3 times more powerful than the normal bomber. Now, there are 2 more transformation quirks left, but because they are insanely overpowered, I'm saving them for later. So while we wait for them, let's discuss the third category of the quirks, is Blast. At number 28, Blast is an emitter quirk that allows its user to shoot continuous blasts of energy from the palms of their hands. And the fact that Sensoji can shoot them at a very rapid rate makes it an ideal quirk to shut down most of the villains. There is one problem though. Despite packing so much power, these blasts are bright enough to temporarily blind Sensoji. This makes it hard for Sensoji to accurately shoot blasts in the right direction. To solve this problem, Sensoji has to wear shades to protect his eyes, which not only saves him from getting flashbanged, but also improves his accuracy. If you find this cool, then how about the quirk that lets you breathe fire? Dragon Breath at number 29 allows Drunk Lee to breathe fire from his mouth by using alcohol as its fuel. Next at number 30, we have Rocket Thrust. Rocket Thrust is an emitter quirk used by the Mazinger brothers and allows them to shoot their right fists at very high speeds. Now, let's talk about some emitter quirks that let you fly. At number 31, we have Cloud. It's an emitter quirk that allows the user to create clouds of different sizes and densities. to the point that they can even hold the weight of several kids. Since these clouds float in the air, Oboro was able to use them just like Goku uses Flying Nimbus. Oboro even uses them in fights and generates a small cloud in front of the enemy's face to block their vision. At number 32, we have Flight. This quirk lets Christopher Skyline fly like Superman. It allows Christopher to cover himself with a barrier. The barrier protects him from any kind of physical harm. He can also surround other people with his barrier and was able to protect the sisters from the bomber's blast. And right there we have the main weakness of this quirk. The thing is, the more Christopher spreads his barrier around someone, the less protection he has around himself, which is exactly why he got injured after saving the sisters. There is one more quirk that lets his user fly, and that will be our last quirk of My Hero Academia Vigilante. So keep watching if you want to learn how that works. In the meanwhile, Scissor at number 33 is an emitter quirk that lets the user cut through almost anything as long as it's in between their index and middle finger. This only works on things that fit between her two fingers. However, Monica has another method to cut things that don't fit between her fingers. And yes, she uses her legs to make that cut. Smoke at number 34 is the perfect quirk for escaping. It allows Robber Villain to shoot huge amounts of smoke through the holes in his body. This is basically smoke grenades on steroids and can even cause irritations in the eyes if you get too close to Robber. Next at number 35, we have Stock. Stock allows the user to completely absorb and store attacks, which he can then release when he wants. First, Garvey has to eat the attack, after which a lump grows on his back. Then, when he releases the attack, the lump detaches from his back and unleashes the attack he had stored. At number 36, we have Pointer, which is an emitter quirk that lets Hokuto point in the direction of something he was looking for. To use this quirk, however, he has to spin in place, after which his limbs point towards what he needed to find. If that was the compass of My Hero Academia, then Polygraph at number 37 is the lie detector of this series. To use this lie detector, Makoto Tsukauchi has to touch her target. After that, a green-yellow lightning sparks from her hands, and the one they're touching. Now, we're gonna discuss some epic quirks of My Hero Academia Vigilante. At number 38, we have Queen Bee. This quirk is possessed by a parasitic bee who can invade the brains of other people through their eyes. This not only allows it to control the host's body, but it was also able to use Bebop's quirk after taking over her body. This quirk also comes with bees, lots of bees. The Queen Bee has a vast control over these bees and even use them to inject hundreds of people with the boost. And yes, you can also make them carry bombs in their stomach and send you towards your enemies. Queen Hachisuka, the first Queen Bee host that we see in the manga, can also use those bees to extract small amounts of blood from other quirk users. She then injects herself with that blood, which as a result allows her to use that person's quirk. It's also a perfect spying tool because the Queen Bee is connected to each bee of the swarm, which means that it can learn whatever other bees are experiencing. And while these are cool, there is one more thing that makes it hard to actually kill the Queen Bee. Because even if you go out of your way to kill the current queen, one of the remaining bees will take over as a new queen of the gang, which means this quirk only needs one regular bee to make sure it never dies out. Now, there is one weakness of this quirk though. Since Queen is connected to all of her bees, she feels pain whenever one of her bees gets injured or destroyed. However, we don't see such a thing when Bebop spams bomb bees throughout the city. And now I think it's the perfect time we discuss the quirks of the villains of My Hero Academia Vigilante. At number 39, we have Bombify. Bombify is one of the transformation quirks used by number 6. It basically allows him to grow bombs in any part of his body. But how does he use them? For that, we have Self-Detonation at number 40. Self-Detonation is an emitter quirk that is used by the Bombers, the Anonymous, and number 6. As the name suggests, this quirk allows the user to self-destruct and generate a huge explosion from their body. The power of the blast depends on the user, and if the power is too high, it can even kill or greatly injure the user. It doesn't matter in the case of bombers, since the only reason they were created for was to do suicide attacks in the city. However, there is one exception for that, which I will discuss in a minute. But let's first talk about how number 6 can use this quirk without taking any major injuries. Well, he has yet another quirk to deal with that. Super Regeneration. This quirk is used by a lot of characters, and the interesting thing is that all of them are villains. The multi-armed bomber used this quirk with self-detonation to instantly regrow its arms and hit Christopher Skyline with 6 explosive punches at a time. This quirk was also used by the high-end Nomu Hood, who could use 6 different attacks. We will discuss the rest later in the video, so stay tuned for that. As for regeneration, Hood was able to survive a point-blank jet burn from Endeavor. Along with that, he also survived Endeavor's second most powerful attack, Prominence Burn, by removing its head from its body and then growing an entirely new body out of it. This quirk is even more insane when number 6 uses it, because he can recover from anything as long as his brain isn't completely destroyed. I mean, he was fine even after having multiple holes in his body. Another quirk we have at number 42 is Radio Waves. It's another quirk used by EMP bombers, and it's also one of the quirks of number 6. This quirk causes an electromagnetic pulse blast that completely shuts down the power and communication system of the entire city. If you remember, All For One and Tamura also had a similar quirk. Tamura used radio waves with air cannon to create a wide range of blasts that completely shut down the communications used by the heroes. As for All For One, he uses this quirk to control the remaining near high-end Nomu and use them to escape the battlefield. But these quirks of number 6 doesn't compare to the one we're gonna discuss at number 43, Overclock. This quirk was originally used by Iwao until All For One stole it from him and gave it to number 6. It's an emitter quirk that allows the user to move at extreme speeds. It makes the user's brain work way faster than normal. This not only speeds up their thinking process, but also boosts their reaction speed, to the point that everything around them looks like it's moving in slow motion. In normal situations, the user can move 3 to 10 times faster than a normal human. However, things get crazy when there's an emergency, because when that happens, the user can easily outspeed a bullet. However, it has one huge drawback. It requires oxygen, so if you're already out of breath, you can't use this quirk. Because of this drawback, this quirk can only be used for a few seconds. Now, number 6 did manage to avoid that drawback. After completely modifying his body with self-detonation and regeneration, number 6 turned into something like this. By using his ultimate move, High Crawler, number 6 canceled the only weakness of this quirk and managed to use Overclock permanently, which means he gets unlimited access to the perks I just mentioned above. Now, let's talk about one of these simple but powerful quirks in My Hero Academia Vigilante. At number 44, we have Slide and Glide. This quirk lets Koichi create a repelling force from his hands, which allows him to glide across any surface. He uses it to travel across the city and can go as fast as a speeding bus. For reference, that is around 80 miles per hour. What's crazy is that this quirk also works in reverse and allows Koichi to attach to surfaces like a suction cup.
But wait, there's more.
He got so good with his quirk that not only was he able to rival the speed of Overclock, but he could even cancel the blast from self-detonation quirks by repelling them. However, that's not all, because Koichi can also shoot repulsion beams by concentrating the energy on his palms. These repulsion beams are very deadly in close range and are even strong enough to pierce through number 6's plasma body without any problem. This repulsion also allows him to do multiple jumps in the air. Now let's talk about the My Hero Academia you're all familiar with, starting with all the transformation quirks. At number 45, we have Cow. This turns pro hero Cow Lady into an absolute unit of a cow. Next at number 46, we have Wing, which lets them fly at very high speeds. It's used by a near high-end Nomu, and later Tamura, who then takes the Wing quirk from Nomu. Beast at number 47 allows the user to transform into a huge, monstrous creature. With this transformation, Jirota's body is covered in fur, and his deadly can send his enemies flying. This body is so strong that even electric shocks have very little effect on him. His senses also become enhanced in this form, to the point that he can scout enemies with their smell from long distances. But these perks come with two weaknesses. Firstly, it's that it's very easy to trick his smell by masking it with some other scent. The second, and the most important one, Jirota makes very reckless decisions in his beast form. Along with beasts, we also have dragons in MHA. Dragon at number 48 lets Ryuko transform herself into a full-fledged dragon. But while Ryuko gets the insane strength and durability of a dragon, we haven't seen her breathe fire. At number 49, we have Black. Black lets Shihai fuse his body into anything dark colored. It basically allows him to become one with the shadows no matter how small the object is. But it's very easy to counter this quirk. All you have to do is bring a flashlight to brighten dark places, and Shihai will basically get forced out of the object that he was merged with. Next at number 50, we have Gyrate. Gyrate lets Senkai Bara spin any part of his body at very high speeds. which adds a lot of punch to his attacks. The next few quirks are the most creepy quirks in My Hero Academia. At number 51, we have Telescopic. This quirk allows Tatami to retract her own body parts into themselves. It works similar to how a turtle retracts itself back into its shell. It's mainly used for defense, but since the process isn't instant, she can be overwhelmed by speed. This next quirk is basically Lizard, but on steroids. Lizard Tail Splitter at number 52 allows Setsuna to divide her body into 50 different parts, which she can then control with her mind. This quirk is quite handy because if she splits her eyes, she can then sneak those eyes anywhere to gather info. And if any part of her body gets destroyed, she can regenerate it by regrouping the scattered pieces of her body. Now let's talk about the second most creepy quirk in My Hero Academia. At number 53, we have Meatball. This quirk lets Seiji control any human flesh however he wants. This quirk not only lets him expand and mold his own flesh into whatever he wants, but he can also throw his own flesh towards his opponents. And the most disgusting part is, anyone that gets captured by this quirk gets deformed into a meatball. However, Seiji must maintain his focus if he wants to keep maintaining their meatball shape. If there was an award for having the creepiest quirk, then Moonfish would have to come at the top, because Blade Tooth at number 54 allows Moonfish to enlarge his teeth at comical lengths. He can also reshape his teeth into extremely sharp blades that are powerful enough to break through Todoroki's ice. To add to the creepiness, Moonfish can even use his teeth to walk and suspend himself in the air. Next, at number 55, we have Iron Club. Iron Club lets Rogane transform his arms into huge iron clubs. Strangely, it also gives him an ogre-like appearance and increases his height to 229 centimeters. At number 56, we have Liquefaction. This quirk was used by the high-end Nomu woman, and it basically turns any part of her body into a liquid state. How about turning your body part into a literal tank? Because at number 57, we have Tongue Tank. Tongue Tank lets an unnamed student from Masagaki School transform their tongue into a tank cannon that extends out of their mouth. It allows them to shoot rock-like projectiles. The next quirk is crazier because at number 58, we got Whole Body Lens. Thanks to his quirk, Taneo Tokuda can create camera lenses anywhere on his body to take pictures. But you also need to print those pictures, right? Well, Tokuda can easily print pictures out of his chest, so you don't have to worry about your epic shots. At number 59, we have Sandstorm. Sandstorm allows Sand Hero Snatch to transform the upper half of his body into sand. He can also control this sand and shape it however he wants. Now let's talk about some quirks that give you swords. At number 60, we have Razor Sharp. Razor Sharp lets Toguro produce large blades from his body, which are not only sharp enough to cut through steel pipes, but are also durable enough to tank a point-blank explosion. Saber at number 61, and works similar to Razor Sharp. It allows its user to turn his limbs into swords. If you like a different kind of sword, then you should check the quirk at number 62. Sword Kill allows the Serpenter brothers to create flexible swords from their shoulders that can fold in and out like a squeeze box. The next quirk doesn't let you create swords, but Tool Arms at number 63 allows the user to grow tools from his limbs. By using this quirk, the Chainsaw Nomu was able to grow chainsaws, a claw hammer, and even a drill. These quirks were related to limbs. Now let's talk about quirks related to hair. At number 64, we have Bristle. Bristle lets Tsuyoshi gently harden his hair. That's the only thing we know about this quirk. Hair Control at number 65. This quirk is used by Needle Hair and Martial Hair, both of which are F-rank villains. Needle Hair uses her quirk to fire off strands of her hair like bullets. As for Martial Hair, she can shape her hair into weapons. Next, at number 65, we have Slice. Slice allows Kiruka to transform her body into razor sharp. She can also fire them as needles that have enough strength and speed to destroy a group of fishing boats. However, despite being razor sharp, Kiruka's hair will get destroyed if they come in contact with something like acid. Also, Kiruka has to keep her hair long or she will lose the crazy firepower. Now, time for some defense-focused quirks, with every next quirk being cooler than the previous one. At number 67, we have Scale Mail. It covers the user's body with sharp, armored scales that grant them increased strength and defense. Though it has some major weaknesses. The process of generating these scales causes Shuichi to bleed because the scales actually tear through his skin. A similar but less painful defense quirk is Scales at number 68. This transformation grants the user a body covered in tough reptilian scales, which can not only be used for defense, but can also be fired like bullets. Along with their high defense, these scales are also sharp enough to damage solid metal structures. At number 69, Hardening. Hardening lets you make any part of your body rock hard to the point that even bullets and explosions do nothing to Kirishima. In case you don't know, some rocks can also be sharper than knives, which means that Kirishima's attacks hit hard, but they can also cut you if you aren't careful. But this high defense has some limits. The main one is that there's a limit to how much damage Kirishima can withstand with his quirk. Another important thing to keep in mind is that while hardening does protect Kirishima from physical attacks, it doesn't give him the same protection against extremely high and low temperatures. Next at number 70, we have Steel. This quirk is very similar to hardening. It gives its user bonkers defense that can even withstand bullets. This quirk also has a similar downside as hardening, and all you need is extreme heat to melt Tetsutetsu. At number 71, we have Crystallize. Yu Hojo's quirk Crystallize allows him to instantly grow a large number of tough and sharp crystals from his body. He can also give a sword shape to his crystals that cover his arm. Another defense-based quirk we have at number 72 is Fat Absorption. I think some of you might have this quirk because Fat Absorption allows Fat Gum to make any object sink into his body on contact. This quirk lets pro hero Fat Gum absorb the raw power behind the enemy's attack and gives high-level protection from bullets, blades, and attack-heavy quirks. However, to make this quirk work, he has to eat a lot of fat. Otherwise, he won't be able to use his quirk. Fat Gum can also launch a counterattack against his enemy. He does this by trading his whole body fat for one powerful punch. Last defense-based quirk on the list, Shield at number 73. The quirk of Pro Hero Crust allows him to create hard hexagonal shields from his body. The shield could tank extremely powerful quirks of the high-end Nomu without any issue. Aside from this broken defense, Crust also uses his quirk to throw a large rotating shield towards its target. Now let's talk about the quirks that increase your size. At number 74, we have Body Bulk. Body Bulk allows a user to bulk up his entire body, which in turn increases his physical strength. And if Shuichi is in a stressful situation, this quirk will give him more strength to make sure he destroys his opponents. Big Fist at number 75. Big Fist gives Itsuka Kendo two big fists that are large enough to carry people and knock sense into them. This seems like a simple quirk, which can only be used for bonking your enemies. But it also has one more very important use. This quirk allows Itsuka to generate strong winds by flapping her massive hands, which can be quite useful for scattering poisonous gases. Next, at number 76, we have Gigantification. It is one of those multiple user quirks which allows their user to increase their size to huge levels. The Gigantomachia's version of this quirk allows him to grow when excited. Gigantomachia can grow up to 25 meters with this quirk, while Pro Hero Mount Lady, on the other hand, can grow up to 20 meters. Moreover, Gigantomachia can grow to any size he wants. However, unlike Gigantomachia, Mount Lady can switch between normal and giant size, so there's no in between. Another quirk Gigantomachia has is Mole at number 77. Mole allows Gigantomachia to grow long and sharp claws from his fingers. He also grows spines on his back, along with a shield on his face. All this is grown to help him dig through the earth like a mole. The spines help him move underground, and the shield protects his eyes from dirt particles. As for claws, these can even tear through buildings and can clear out all the obstacles with ease. All gym bros would love to have this quirk because Fierce Gains at number 78 allows Gigantomachia to make his muscles rock hard. Hypertrophy at number 79. It allows All For One to enlarge his arm at his will. The next two quirks might sound useless, but they really shine in the last chapters. However, there are also spoilers. At number 80, we have Bloodlet, which lets All For One discharge, then absorb his own blood from his body. And at number 81, we have Antigen Swap. That lets All For One change his blood type. Next, we have some attack-based quirks from All For One. At number 82, we have Rivet. This quirk lets All For One generate big bolts and screws from his arm. He has another quirk with a similar name, but entirely different function. Rivet Stab at number 83 lets All For One and Tamura create black tendrils that either extend from his fingers or come out of their spine. These tendrils can easily pierce bodies, which can or cannot damage the target. You see, if Rivet Stab is being used for stabbing someone, then obviously it will injure. But if All For One is using it to activate the quirks of other people, then it won't do anything to them. It's a separate quirk that lets him do that, which we'll cover later. Another quirk that boosts All For One's punches is Spring-like Limbs at number 84. Spring-like Limbs allows the user to store and release insane force by coiling their muscles like a spring. This is used by both All For One and Tamura Shigaraki, who launches himself through the air with the this quirk. And if that wasn't enough, Spear-like Bones at number 85 allows All For One to generate cone-shaped spears on any part of his body. These spears are made of bones, and their size, length, and numbers can easily be controlled by the user. These cone-shaped bones are sharp enough to puncture a human body without any problem. We'll discuss the rest of All For One's quirks later. For now, let's move to number 86, where we have Stress. Yotsubashi's quirk allows him to convert his anger, stress, and frustration into raw power, which not only makes him strong, but also increases the size of his body parts. A single finger enhanced by this quirk allowed Yotsubashi to destroy a double of villain twice, and erase several clones of League of Villains with a single swing of his arm. At number 87, we have Arbor. That allows Kamui Woods to create and control wood from any part of his body. Kamui can multitask and rescue people from dangerous situations while fighting villains at the same time. Kamui also uses this quirk to swing himself through the air by attaching his branches to buildings. However, since it's wood, it's weak to fire and doesn't do well against explosions. Next, at number 88, we have Muscle Augmentation. This one is used by many characters. It allows its user to control and enhance the muscle layers present in their body. In Muscular's case, he is able to cover his body with more than 12,000 layers of muscle. This not only gives him a defense boost, but it also allows Muscular to fight with One For All at 100% of its power. Now, since he's using muscles, and because muscles require energy to function, you can counter this quirk by hitting them hard. Since regenerating requires energy, the user runs out of energy if you keep breaking them. This is also the second quirk of High-End Nomuhood. At number 89, we have Power. This one is an emitter quirk, which, just like muscle augmentation, gives its user raw strength. It lets them build up extreme amounts of raw power in their body, which when released can easily smash Pro Hero Endeavor through a reinforced concrete building. Another emitter that's used by Hood is Storage at number 90. Storage allows Hood to store other Nomu inside his body, which he then uses in battle to overwhelm his opponents. At number 91, we have Shoulder-Mounted Jets. As the name suggests, this quirk gives Hood 4 retractable jet boosters mounted on his upper back. Since these jets aren't that good for flying, Hood uses another quirk to make them work perfectly, and that's Transforming Arms at number 92. This quirk lets Hood reshape and extend his arms freely. He can make his fists larger for a stronger attack, or he can simply use those large arms to grab and throw his opponents. However, Hood mainly uses this quirk to create wing-like structures, which helps him to fly at high speeds using shoulder-mounted jets. Now it's time for some long-range weapons. At number 93, we have Longbow. Beerus becomes able to transform her left hand's thumb and pinky finger into a bow. This bow can easily penetrate vehicles and can even act as a homing missile to chase their targets. But while Beerus can create an epic bow with her quirk, she isn't able to create her own arrows, so this quirk is useless when she has no arrows. However, you don't have to worry about ammo if you have this next quirk. At number 94, Rifle. Rifle works similar to the longbow. By bringing her arm to her shoulder, Lady Nagant is able to bring out a rifle that uses her hair as bullets. But how do you load a bullet in this thing? Well, you can do that by feeding the bullet into a hole that opens up on her palm. According to Midoriya, the bullets are a lot stronger than Bakugo's howitzer impacts. What's crazy is that these bullets can even track its target. But what if you want a bipod? Don't worry, because not only can Kaina's quirk create a bipod, but it can also create a rifle scope from her flesh. Combine those two things and you can hit anyone in a 3-kilometer radius. Transforming your arm is one thing, but what about transforming into someone else? Because transform at number 95. Lets Toga transform into any person she wants by drinking their blood. And it's not just their body, Toga can even copy their voice. And things get even crazier after she awakens her quirk, because after that, Toga can even duplicate the quirk of the person they transformed into. For that, Toga needs to clear 2 conditions. The first condition is that she has to be close enough to its target in an emotional sense. As for the second one, she must have some knowledge of her target's quirk. If you found that interesting, then how about transforming your body parts into the parts of different animals? Manifest at number 96 allows Tamaki to enhance his body parts with the features of anything he's eaten recently. For example, if he eats takoyaki, he can transform his fingers into octopus tentacles, and the more he eats a particular substance, the stronger his transformation will be. If you're into stretching, then you'd like the next quirk we have. At number 97, Ply Body allows Tiger to stretch his body in a way that would normally break bones. He can capture his enemies by wrapping his arms around them. Now, let me tell you about a quirk that makes you even more flexible. Fold a Body at number 98 is used by pro hero Edgeshot, and it not only makes his body as thin as paper, but it also allows him to stretch his limbs. Edgeshot uses this quirk to pass through extremely narrow spaces and can even fit in different objects without any problem. When fighting an enemy, Edgeshot folds his body into a thin blade, which he then uses to stab his opponents. This happens so fast that his opponents cannot even react to his attacks. However, this doesn't compare to his ultimate move, Zenith. By stretching his body to very extreme limits, Edgeshot can become as thin as a thread. He uses this move to save Bakugo by stitching his damaged organs. Now, let's talk about one of the strongest transformation quirks. At number 99, we have Permeation. Permeation allows Mirio to phase his body through anything he wants. And by anything, I literally mean anything. Even things like light, oxygen, and sound pass through his body. You can already see the issue with this quirk. For most of his life, Mirio would randomly phase through objects, which would put him in life-threatening situations. Even after gaining control over his quirk, the gravity will drag his body through the ground if he activates the quirk on his full body. To make sure that doesn't happen, Mirio keeps his feet solid, while the rest of his body phases through the opponent's attacks. Now, let's shift to mutant quirks. At number 100, we have Life Force. Life Force allows the user to age so slow that it actually doubles their lifespan. This is the reason Kyudai looks like 60 years old, even though he's at least 120 years old. Now, this sounds useful, but it sacrifices mobility. This leaves us with only 215 quirks, so let's move on to number 101, where we have Mad Gluttony. Mad Gluttony allows Genji to eat objects with the help of the giant mouth in his stomach. After enhancing his quirk with another power we'll discuss later, Genji was able to attack and bite others from long distances. However, despite being powerful, a strong enough attack can easily crush these mouths. At number 102, we have Squirmy Fingers. It allows David Shield to precisely control his fingers, which lets him use any object he has in his hands with perfect accuracy. David mainly uses his insane dexterity to make hero costumes. Next, at number 103, Tail. Tail is a mutant-type quirk used by Ojiro. Mutant-type quirks cause a permanent change in the user's body. In Ojiro's case, he has a big tail coming out of his butt. However, it's by no means a normal tail. It is strong enough to break metal objects and can even support Ojiro's own weight. Thanks to this tail, Ojiro can not only capture his enemies, but can also hang on a pipe like a monkey. While we're at it, let's discuss all animal-related mutant quirks. At number 104, we have Bighorn. As the name suggests, this quirk gives its user two big horns. This quirk is possessed by Daikaku Miyagi, who works as a newscaster. Sadly, we know nothing about this quirk. However, this isn't the only bull-type quirk we know nothing about, because at number 105, we have Bullhead. Similar to Bighorn, Bullhead gives its user a pair of bull-like horns on their head. It is used by E-rank villain Minotaurus. At number 106, we have Eagle. Eagle gives its user an eagle-like appearance. We don't know if Takahiro can fly with these wings or not, but at number 107, we have Flying Squirrel. This quirk is used by the sidekick of pro hero Clairvoyance. This quirk allows its user to glide through the air like a flying squirrel. However, Claire's sidekick has enough power to carry one person on her back while she's gliding. At number 108, we have Lion. Lion is the quirk used by pro hero number 13, Shishido. It basically gives him the speed and power of a lion. Shishido's roar can also cancel the ultrasonic waves of the next quirk. At number 109, Orcanus. This quirk lets Sakamata do anything a regular orca can do. He can use Orca's power on land. Obviously, Sakamata would have an advantage in water thanks to this quirk, but even on land, he's a menace. Sakamata can instantly paralyze his opponents by producing ultrasonic waves. These waves pack enough power to destroy large waves of ice. Sakamata is weak to extreme heat and dehydration, but if he doesn't forget to bring a water bottle with him to fight, he can easily rehydrate himself to regain his strength. With this one bottle, Sakamata was able to get out of Todoroki's fire prison and even block Deku's shot-style kick without any problem. Another sea creature we have at number 110 is Octopus. This quirk gives villain Innsmouth multiple tentacles. He can also shooting from his mouth just like a normal octopus. Next at number 111, we have Spotted Seal. Spotted Seal lets the pro hero Selkie do anything a regular Spotted Seal can do, even on land. So along with the usual enhanced strength and speed, Selkie can hold his breaths for long periods of time. With this ability, Selkie can dive as deep as 1,500 meters. And the best part is, he can find objects underwater with the help of sound. Speaking of finding something, Serpentress at number 112. Serpentress gives Uwabami 3 living snakes as part of her hair. These snakes have excellent senses, which allows Iwabami to locate hidden enemies as well as missing people. Another quirk that gives its users sharp senses is Dog at number 113. The quirk used by multiple people. It enhances their sense of hearing and smell. In Ryu and Kenji's case, it also gives them some of the characteristics of a dog. Now, for everyone's favorite bunny, we move to number 114, where we have Rabbit. Rabbit gives Usagiyama rabbit-like abilities. It enhances Usagiyama's senses to the roof, so much so that she can accurately pinpoint the location of a fight from far away. Along with that, Rabbit also gives her long ears, large thick legs, and the fluffiest tail in My Hero Academia. Usagiyama's legs are so strong that one single ground stomp generated enough wind pressure to put out the fire. This leaves us with 201 more quirks to talk about, so let's move to number 115, where we have Gecko. Gecko is the second quirk used by Shuichi, which gives him a reptile-like body and allows him to stick himself to walls. Similar to Gecko is Chameleon at number 116. Chameleon gives its user the physical appearance and abilities of a chameleon. Thanks to this quirk, Invisible Wall can stick and climb on walls, rotate their eyes in multiple directions, and camouflage their entire body to either escape or do surprise attacks. Then we have two frogs. First at number 117 is Tree Frog. That gives Tamao an extended tongue, which curls inward when she sticks it out. Then at number 118 we have Frog. Frog lets Tsuyu Asui do anything a frog can do, but better. She has strong legs that let her jump to great heights, a powerful long tongue that can stretch up to 20 meters, and mucus that can either paralyze her opponents or hide her scent. Tsuyu is also a very fast swimmer and can even camouflage with her environment. However, because she is basically a human frog, and because frogs are cold-blooded creatures, Tsuyu is very sensitive to cold, so much so that if she's exposed to cold for long periods of time, she won't be able to use her abilities and will simply enter a hibernation-like state. We also have insects in MHA. At number 119, Centipede. Centipede gives Juzo very long and centipede-like limbs, which he uses to attack or capture enemies over long distances. The next three quirks are sound-based. At number 120, we have Goodyear. Goodyear allows Sirius to hear high-frequency sounds that are impossible for normal humans to hear. Sirius uses it to communicate with her boss Selkie and can also detect multiple people around her. Then we have a very comical quirk at number 121, Comic. Comic allows manga Fukidashi to manifest sound words like kaboom, boing, and bonk into huge Japanese letters by simply speaking them. These sound words carry the same effects as the sound they're based on. For example, if Fukidashi says boing, he will create bouncy letters that can rebound projectiles. And saying the sound word bois can make electricity flow through his entire body. However, using too much comic back-to-back will eventually cause his throat to become sore, which in return will limit the result of his quirk. Next at number 122, we have AnyVoice. AnyVoice allows Koji to communicate and order animals, and he can do that with just his speech. This quirk gives Koji a huge number of options, depending on the animals he can order around. To give one example, he can use bugs to do sneak attacks and distract his opponents. Along with it being a versatile quirk, it also has a few drawbacks. The main one was range. If animals are out of range, Koji can't communicate with them. Now, Koji did overcome this problem by growing two horns, which allowed him to communicate with animals over very long distances. Moreover, since this quirk is sound-based, any other noise that is louder than it will make it harder for Koji to use this quirk. Let's move on and talk about quirks that give you more arms. Next at number 123 is Body Morph, which not only gives 2 extra arms to the E-rank villain Steel Bulwark, but also grants him great physical strength. Similarly, at number 124, we have Quad Arms. If you remember Forearms, this quirk is basically that, as it gives its user, Fourth Kind, an extra pair of hands. Next at number 125, we have Extra Arms. This quirk is also identical to Quad Arms and gives Forearms Zealot an extra set of arms. The next quirk is different from these 3 quirks we've just talked about because Dupli Arms at number 126 gives Meizo a set of arm-like tentacles that are attached to each other, which can then transform into duplicates of his other body parts. These duplicated parts are enhanced versions of his original body parts, which means that by duplicating his arms into multiple ears or eyes, Meizo can take his senses to the next level. And what's crazy is that losing any of his replicated body parts isn't a big deal because Meizo can easily replicate that body part once he heals. These tentacles are webbed together, which not only helps Meizo to glide for short periods of time, but it also allows him to carry his allies by covering them with these webbed arms. Horn Cannon at number 127 lets Pony Tsunotori fire off several horns like a bullet. After she shoots her existing horns, a new pair instantly grows on her head. Pony can also control 4 of these horns at a time. Not only are these horns strong enough to hold Mezo Shoji, who's known for his physical strength, but they can also push away Tetsutetsu, who can literally turn his body into steel. However, despite being strong, these horns are breakable, and Pony has to eat keratin daily. For those of you who aren't science nerds, keratin is basically a type of protein, and you can stop Pony from using her quirk by just holding her horns in place. At number 128, we have Trap Flex. That allows Habit Headgear to flex their trap muscles so hard that they cover his whole head. Now, this flexing ain't for show because this also gives him an extreme speed and strength boost. However, it doesn't matter since he got one-shotted by All Might. And at number 129, we have Touhou. This quirk is quite similar to the Kaiju quirk we discussed before. The only difference is Kaiju turns the user into a Kaiju, while Touhou only gives its user, Godzilla, the attributes of a Kaiju. Next, we have 5 hair-related quirks. At number 130, we have Chronostasis. Chronostasis grants Hari an arrow-shaped hair that can extend in a straight line to cut his opponents. Now, it might not do any crazy damage to the target, but it does slow them down to the point that it took Aizawa a while to blink his eyes. However, he cannot use his quirk while moving, so he has to remain still to extend his hair. Next, at number 131, we have Blazing Hair. Blazing Hair allows Mokamiji to freely control the flames on her head. She can either throw them like fireballs or make a cool fire sword out of them. Along with that, Mo can even use these flames to fly through the air. After that, we have the quirk of the biggest pervert in MHA. At number 132, we have Pop-Off. Mineda's quirk allows him to produce sticky balls from his head. These balls aren't sticky for Mineta, but instead act as a trampoline for him. Once Mineta removes one of his balls, a new one instantly grows on his head. These sticky balls work great for traps, but if Mineta pops off too many balls at once, he will start to bleed from his head. Another hair-related quirk is Extendo Hair at number 133. Thanks to this quirk, Nagamasamura can control the growth and movement of every single hair on his body. And despite being hair, they are extremely indestructible, to the point that Nagamasa actually uses them as armor. He can also capture a large number of enemies with his Rapunzel-like hair. Vines at number 134 takes it to the next level. Vines gave Ibarra thorny vines in place of regular hair, which she can control however she wants. The obvious use is to capture the opponents. These vines also act as a strong defensive barrier and are strong enough to dig through concrete. However, despite being tough, you can still cut these vines, and the most important thing, Ibarra needs sunlight and water to further grow them, which means this quirk is technically not effective at night. To change things up, we have Gatling at number 135. Gatling gives the pro hero Gunhead gun-like organs in his arms. These organs shoot claw-like objects made of keratin. Next, at number 136, we have Engine. Engine is used by the Ida brothers, and it gives them engine-like parts on their body that allows them to dash through long distances in a very short amount of time. Now, this one has a few weaknesses. For starters, the Ida brothers need fuel. In Tenya's case, he uses orange juice as a source of fuel, while Tensei prefers grape juice. Moreover, because it's an engine, using this quirk beyond the limits causes the engine to overheat, which might also explode if the user doesn't stop. We have a faster quirk at number 137. Jet makes Gran Torino one of the fastest pro heroes in My Hero Academia world. Gran Torino's quirk allows him to shoot air from the soles of his feet. This not only allows him to fly at a limited height, but also makes him move so fast, you will lose sight of the old man. But where does Gran Torino get this much air to perform those badass moves? Well, from his lungs, which is why he cannot fly above a certain height. If you like listening to music while you're flying, then at number 138, we have Earphone Jack. Earphone Jack grants Kyoka long, controllable earlobes that work like headphone cables, which she can plug into different objects. These earlobes can stretch up to 6 meters and can detect sound around a 12-meter radius. It allows her to raise the volume of her heartbeat to explosive levels. She can catch very faint sounds across extremely thick walls, and yes, she can also use them on her phone. However, overusing these jacks can cause Kyoka's ears to bleed. Next, at number 139, we have Invisibility. Invisibility grants Toru and her parents a completely invisible body, but this quirk doesn't apply to her clothes. So in order for her quirk to be useful, she has to be naked while she's on the mission. At number 140, we have Water Pump. Water Pump allows Pro Hero Backdraft to create water from the hose he has in place of his hands. He has insane control over the water. After that, we have a quirk that lets you create whirlpools in water. At number 141, we have Helical Scythe. Helical Scythe gives Leviathan large red extensions on his fingers and head. These extensions can stretch to long distances and can even pierce through solid ice. We have something similar at number 142. Iron Claws turns the end of the user's finger into metallic claws. It's used by Higari and Sickle Claw. In Higari's case, his version of Iron Claws lets him dig underground like a mole, while Sickle can make his hands into larger, sharper claws, which are perfect for slashing his opponents. At number 143, we have Zoom. Zoom allows Mei Hatsume to zoom into faraway locations. But what about something even better? At number 144, we have Infrared. As the name suggests, Infrared gives All For One infrared senses, which allows him to sense his entire surroundings. However, its range is not very high, and it is possible to disturb this quirk by using sensors. Next, we have two paper-related quirks. At number 145, we have Curse. Just like its name, this quirk also looks cursed, as it turns the entire body of Thousand Eyes into paper runes. And since it's paper, it also makes his body very light. This paper is very special. Not only can Thousand Eyes launch sharp strands of his paper towards his enemies, but he can also create clones of himself by using this paper. After that, we have Papyrus at number 146. Salam's quirk Papyrus allows him to flatten his body like papyrus, which is basically a very thick and old version of modern day paper. But despite being thicker than paper, Salam can slip through narrow spaces without any problem and can ride the wind to move at insane speeds. However, since it's basically paper, Salam doesn't do well in places with high humidity. Did you know papyrus was made from a plant? And that's why at number 147 we have Plant. Plant simply allows the villain Chomper to transform his body parts into plant structures, which he can also use to heal allies. Next, at number 148, we have Tape. Used by Sarah of Class 1A, it allows its user to shoot tape from the opening on their elbows, which immediately sticks to the target. And this ain't your normal office tape. This thing is strong enough to capture multiple opponents at once. It is durable enough to hold huge structures together and can even support Sero's own weight without any problem. Now, tape isn't that sticky, which is why you need Semidine at number 149. Semidine allows Kojiro to spray glue-like liquid from the holes in his head. After hitting something, the glue will either harden up, or Kojiro can also make it sticky and dangerous to touch. Along with that, Kojiro can also adjust the speed at which his glue dries. Now, glue will mess up your skin, so to deal with that, we have Glycerin at number 150. Glycerin allows Mitsuki to produce a smooth liquid from her skin, which helps her maintain a youthful appearance despite her old age. Now, there are many destructive quirks in My Hero Academia, and you will continue to see more of them in the video. But there is one quirk that's just different from the rest. At number 151, we have High-Specs. High-Specs is the reason Nezu is the smartest rat on the planet, because this quirk takes his brains to the next level. It is only because of this quirk that Nezu, who's actually a rat, can think, speak, and act better than a human. Now, there are only 164 more quirks left. At number 152, we have Shock Absorption. Shock Absorption works exactly like it sounds. It lets Nomu reduce the effectiveness of physical attacks by absorbing the shocks produced by them. However, the Nomu cannot completely cancel the physical attacks, since All Might was able to destroy him by going beyond his normal 100% output. The last and one of the strongest mutant quirks we have on this list is Fierce Wings at number 153. Fierce Wings was used by Keigo Takami until All For One stole it from him. Fierce Wings gives Keigo a pair of large red wings that are made up of dozens of feathers. And that's not all. Keigo can freely control each individual feather with his mind. The control Keigo has over these feathers is so insane that he can assign a task to each feather and they will carry it out without any problem. A single feather is strong enough to easily move a person, and they can even feel other people and objects around them by feeling the vibrations. Now let's shift to the emitter quirks, where at number 154, we have Absorption and Release. This quirk is released by the Four-Eyed Nomu, who uses it to absorb the attacks of emitter quirks, which the Nomu can then send back to their opponent. This works similar to Shock Absorption, but just like Shock Absorption, it doesn't completely cancel the damage, which means the Nomu gets injured while it absorbs the attack. Another Nomu quirk we have at number 155 is Rupture. Rupture allows the woman Nomu to blow up her body parts. She used this quirk with her liquefaction to send a huge spray of her body parts towards her opponents. Next, at number 156, we have Luminance. Luminance allows the user to emit bright light from their body. All For One stole this quirk from the luminescent baby, and later killed the child. Speaking of children, let's talk about the emitter quirks of the students of Masagaki School. At number 157, King Slam. King Slam allows an unnamed student from Masagaki School to take a large hammer out of nowhere to attack his enemy. Number 158, we have Queen Beam. Queen Beam allows a female student to shoot energy from her face, which can be cancelled by her after she's released it. Halfway done, at number 159, we have Electromagnetic Bullets. Electromagnetic bullets allow a student to create an electromagnetic field that lets him shoot whatever he has in his hands. Viral Cosmos at number 160, which allows a student to throw a bunch of petals to attack her enemy. She's able to create these petals from the 2 flowers on her head. Hula Hoop at 161 allows a student from Masagaki Primary School to create a large hoop of energy, which he throws towards his opponents to attack them. Assault Dust at number 162 allows a student to shoot and control dust at high speeds. After that, we have the last quirk from Masagaki School. At number 163, Binging Ball. Binging Ball allows Tomoshiro to release small balls from his body. These balls move at very high speeds and also have their very own mouth, which allows them to eat other objects. Another kid who's not from Masagaki School uses Hologram at number 164. That lets Mahoro create holograms of anything she wishes. Next, at number 165, we have Food. Food allows Soramitsu to bite, chew, and digest anything he comes in direct contact with. And while he can technically eat poisonous substances, doing so is not recommended because he will get ill. And if you want to grab food without moving, at number 166, we have Attraction of Small Objects. That lets Deku's mother attract small objects to her. Another similar quirk is Conjure at number 167. Conjure allows Tenko to warp any small object straight into his hand. Poltergeist at 168 lets Reiko control objects and people close to her with her mind. However, she cannot lift more than the weight of one person. Next, at number 169, we have Telekinesis. Telekinesis allows Ugo to control and move multiple non-living things however he wants. At number 170, we have Spatial Excursion. Thanks to this quirk, Camille can freely move objects and people in any space without being pulled down by gravity. There is one quirk that takes this to the next level. Larceny at number 171 lets Toyo steal anything his target has, which also includes things created by other quirks. However, this quirk doesn't work if the object is way too heavy, and he can only use this quirk on things he's looking at, which means that if you take out his eyes, he can't use this quirk. The last quirk that lets you move objects is Magic at number 172. No, Enma cannot do Abracadabra with it. Instead, he can create energy rings from his wrists, which can be used to move people or objects. The next quirk isn't magic, but it definitely works like a charm. Cell Activation at number 173 allows the user to activate the cells in their body or someone else's body by touching them. This, as a result, increases regeneration, recovery, and even improves physical condition. The only problem is that it drains the user's stamina and will tire them out if they use it for too long. The next quirk is very similar to this. At number 174, we have Heal. Granny Chio can boost the healing process of her target by kissing them. Thanks to this quirk, injuries that might take months to recover from can be healed in a matter of seconds. However, there is a huge cost you have to pay for this quirk to work, because Heal requires stamina from the injured person. If their wounds are serious, it can leave them very tired. But if they don't have enough stamina to handle the process, it could even kill them. Next, at number 175, we have IQ. This is similar to High Specs. It lets Psycho enhance her intellect by multiplying her IQ. She can temporarily increase her IQ after she drinks tea and closes her eyes to think. Number 176, Mummification. Mummification allows Hoyo Makihara to mummify objects by wrapping them with red bandages that cover their whole body. The exact limit is unknown, but Hoyo can control dozens of mummies at a time and make them fight for him. And while he cannot mummify human beings, Hoyo can actually mummify their clothes or other objects to use it against them. But you can easily break this bandage with enough force, which will cause Hoyo to lose control of the mummy. At number 177, we have Mimicry. Thanks to his quirk, Joy Itanaka can transfer his body and mind into solid objects, which he can then control as if they were his actual body. Usually, Joy could only use this quirk on objects that are as large as an average-sized refrigerator. However, after using the boost, Joy became able to control entire locations. Number 178, Outburst. This quirk is used by Miss Joke, which when activated causes others to laugh so hard that they can't even think properly, which makes it useful for catching villains. But there's a quirk that's better at making others laugh. Smile at number 179 causes other people to laugh uncontrollably for 2 whole hours. Shinjiro can activate this quirk by simply showing his teeth to the target. The best part is, it also works on machines such as robots, but instead of making them laugh, it simply causes them to short circuit. At number 180, we have Leafipulation. Leafipulation is quite a cool quirk used by Yakuza Thug, as it allows him to fire off the leaves from the plants towards his opponents, which means this quirk is useless in a place that doesn't have plants. But in order to maintain existing plants, you need water, and at number 188, we have Water Gun. Kota Izumi can shoot a stream of water from his hands. It doesn't pack much power, but it was enough to distract Muscular, and Kota was even able to help put out the fire in the Beast Forest. Next, at number 182 is Tidal Boar. With Tidal Boar, Big Red Dot can produce a large amount of water from their mouth, which has so much pressure that it can even lift up a trigger bomb. On the other hand, Water Control at number 183 allows Dozemon to control water however he wants. He can make big sharp claws out of water that are strong enough to slash through a boat. After that, we have Bubble at number 184. This quirk allows Bubble Girl to make bubbles of different sizes. She can fill these bubbles with a smell they've smelled at least once in their life. Bubble Girl mainly uses this quirk to distract her enemies by temporarily blinding them. Similar to Bubbles is Clean Bubbler at number 185. Clean Bubbler allows Susugu to create and control soapy water from his body that is strong enough to keep many people in the air. Susugu can also make soap bubbles that can trap and float as targets. These bubbles can also disinfect and provide first aid to the injured people. Let's change it up with wind-related quirks. At number 186, Gale Gale. Gale Gale allows Gale Villain to control and spin the wind around his body to fly. And while it looks harmless, the wind around his body is so strong that it can deflect anything that comes in contact with it. An even better quirk at 187 is Whirlwind. Whirlwind allows Inasa to control the air around him. He then uses that air to create strong winds and small tornadoes. He can even push himself, the people around him, and different objects all at the same time. Things might get difficult for him if there's ever a large fire, because high temperatures can push the air away, which in return disturbs his control over his quirk. Controlling bubbles, water, or wind is one thing, even a kid can do that, but what about controlling your own blood? Because Blood Control at number 188 allows Vlad King to control his own blood after it leaves his body. After the blood leaves his body, Vlad can even harden it to capture the enemies. And the best part is, he isn't affected by severe blood loss, since he can reabsorb his blood back into his body. However, Vlad King should pray he never fights Stendhal. To understand why, let's move to 189, where we have Blood Curdle, which allows Stendhal to temporarily paralyze his opponents by licking their blood samples. This quirk also gives Stendhal a very long tongue that has many small but visible bumps on it. Now, the time a target remains paralyzed depends on their blood type. In Stendhal's case, blood type B has the highest time of 8 minutes. After that, the time gets shorter in order of AB, A, and O. Moreover, if there's a quirk like Antigen Swap, then they can free themselves from Blood Curdle's effects. At 190, we have Control Glass. Control Glass allows Star Servant to control and reshape large amounts of glass in his area. He can also turn a solid glass into a liquid state and even reverse this process. At 191, we have White Line. White Line allows Ending to control any lane lines painted on the road. He uses this quirk to capture cars and other objects through the air. Traject at number 192 allows Kido to control the path of anything that passes through his bandage. He can even change the path of people that are flying in the air. Next, we have cool laser-related quirks. Laser at number 193 is similar to the beams from his eyes, minus the long name. It allows Pro Hero Exilus to fire energy beams from his right eye. 194 is Mutant Bavini. Mutant Bavini allows Stitch Giant to shoot lasers from his face. Shooting lasers from the eyes and mouth is so old. Let me tell you about Naval Laser at number 195. Naval Laser allows Yuga Aoyama to fire twinkling laser beams from his belly button and can even push him away at a high speed. These beams are powerful enough to destroy metal and solid concrete. Aside from that, Aoyama uses it to light up dark areas, and it also works as a great SOS signal. Now, this quirk did not belong to Aoyama. It was actually given to him by All For One, who stole it from a random person. That's why Aoyama has trouble controlling this quirk, to the point that it leaks out from his belly button if he's not wearing a sparkle belt. And Aoyama cannot use this quirk for more than 1 second, because if he does, then he'll get a stomachache. But he wouldn't have to worry about that if he had Homing at number 196. Homing allows Pro Hero Snipe to lock onto any target within 600 meters, after which he can make anything he shoots chase after that target. However, projectiles aren't very strong, and he also can't control which part of the opponent's body they should hit. At 197, we have Telepath. With Telepath, Pro Hero Mandalay can communicate with multiple people with her mind. The range of this quirk is not mentioned, but Mandalay was able to communicate with everyone present inside the Beast Forest at once. However, it's only a one-way communication, so she cannot receive any responses. At number 198, we have Vibrate. Vibrate lets Shindo create vibrations or shockwaves that can travel through any object. These vibrations are strong enough to cause small but controlled earthquakes. However, if he uses strong vibrations too quickly, the aftershocks can hit his own body and leave him unable to move. To detect those vibrations, we have Vibration Detection at number 199. Vibration Detection, on the other hand, allows All For One to detect very small vibrations around him. Since he cannot see through his eyes, All For One uses this quirk alongside Infrared to sense his surroundings. Copy at number 200 lets Naito use a quirk after touching its user. After that, Naito gets full access to their quirk. He can copy and store multiple quirks, but that depends on how much he trains his quirk. However, he cannot activate more than one copied quirk at a time. While Naito can copy any quirk he wants, he cannot use accumulation type quirks properly. This leaves us with 115 quirks more to talk about. At number 201, we have Sloshed, that causes anyone who comes close to Deidoro to lose their balance. And even if you somehow manage to knock out Deidoro, this effect will last for a while. Next are some quirks that let you control others. At number 202, Mind Reaper. Odd Eye's quirk can force a person they touch to expose things they don't want others to know. However, if the target has strong willpower, then they can stop themselves from speaking their dark secrets. Similarly, Confession at number 203 can force the target to answer anything. For it to work, you have to first ask them a question, after which the target will share their true thoughts, secrets, and feelings about anything. If you want more control, then at number 204 we have Brainwashing. Hitoshi's quirk allows him to brainwash his opponents, but in order to activate this power, the target has to respond to something Hitoshi said. This also means that this quirk is useless if the target simply shuts up. It's also possible to break out if someone shines a very bright light at the target. And no, Hitoshi cannot ask his targets to write down information from their memory, since it's not possible to have them do complex commands. Another similar quirk is Daydream at number 205. Deborah can control someone by hypnotizing them just by looking at them. Once it's active, the target's mind gets trapped in a dreamlike world where they live their deepest desires. Since dreams are like illusions, Glamour at number 206 lets Cammy create both visual and sound-based illusions for a short time. Cammy can fill a large room with illusions without any problem. Despot at number 207. Despot allows Dictator to control dozens of people with the threads that come out of his body. Dictator will lose control over the people only if they receive a strong shock or if he himself gets knocked out. After that, you can just make them forget their memories with Muddied at number 208. Muddied allows Kagero to make someone forget their memories of the previous 5 minutes by touching their head. They're also not able to clearly remember the next 5 minutes of their life. At number 209, we have Anthropomorph. Anthropomorph allows Skeptic to take a human-sized object, like a refrigerator or a desk, and turn it into an exact copy of any person he wants. He can also remotely control these puppets at the same time, which makes them perfect for overwhelming his enemy with numbers. If Copy lets you copy someone's quirk, then Double at number 210 allows Jin and Nomumoka to create a copy of any object they touch. Jin originally had a limit of creating only 2 doubles at a time, but there's a catch. Since his copies also have access to Double, Jin can create hundreds of copies of himself by using their copy of the quirk. To create the copy, Jin needs to have a precise image of whatever he wants to duplicate. Otherwise, the copy won't last long. Another not so interesting way to do that is with clones at number 211. Ectoplasm can release a thick substance from his mouth and shape it to create his clones. With his fluid, he can create up to 36 clones that come in handy when you want to bully someone. However, these clones can be destroyed with one strong blow. Next, we have Monster Summon at number 212. Monster allows Simon Galini to create monsters that are similar to those found in a dungeon crawler video game. Mushroom at number 213 allows Kinoko to create and spread fungus spores from her body, which quickly grow into full-grown mushrooms after making contact with a solid surface. And these mushrooms can even grow on the human body. Kinoko uses this fact to grow fungus in her opponent's throat, which causes them to suffocate. But there's one big problem. This quirk actually targets human bodies, which means Kinoko can accidentally affect his allies. So to make sure that doesn't happen, Kinoko has to sterilize them beforehand. Let's talk about quirks that allow their users to release different gases. At number 214, Poison Gas. Poison gas lets Takeshi create toxic fog that makes people feel sick after they inhale it. But I don't blame this guy, because if he doesn't release it, the poison gas will fill up his entire body and affect his own health. And the fact that he cannot stop generating the gas also doesn't help him. Very similar to poison gas is gas at number 215. Gas allows Mustard to create a poisonous gas from his body, which can also cause his opponents to fall asleep. What's crazy is that Mustard can even sense the movement and presence of his opponents within the gas because of the change. But since it's a gas, it can be easily filtered by a gas mask. You know what's worse than this quirk? Zombie Virus at number 216, which lets Romero create a pink gas that can temporarily transform anyone who breathes it into zombies. The infected people not only gain a boost in strength, but they can also spread the zombie virus by biting other people. However, this quirk also affects Romero, which means that if he accidentally breathes the pink gas, or if someone bites him, he too will turn into a zombie. If you don't want to turn people into zombies, then you can just use Somnambulist at number 217. Midnight can put her targets to sleep by releasing a smell from her body. The smell is more effective on males than on females, which makes her a perfect hero to capture male villains. However, it is possible to avoid getting affected by this quirk if they hold their breath or wear a mask. At number 218, we have Airwalk. This quirk was also used by All For One, and he transferred it to Kaina Satsumi. As the name suggests, Airwalk allows the user to stand on and control the air around them, which lets them float in the sky. However, if the user is not focused, they will start to fall to the ground. Another air-related quirk is Solid Air at number 219. Solid Air lets Kosei solidify air to form walls and platforms with his breath. These walls do not fall to the ground once they're solidified and will float in midair even when another person hangs onto it. There is an even better quirk than this at number 220, Lockdown. It allows Ken Tagaki to lock objects into a certain point of space. This means that anything he touches becomes immobile. This would have been the best way to deal with your enemies, but sadly this quirk doesn't work on living beings. At number 221, we have Metal Manipulation. Wolfram's quirk allows him to control metallic objects around him by just placing his hands on them. He can bend any metal to his will. But if there is not much metal around him, Wolfram isn't able to fight properly. Iron Ball at number 222 allows Sidoro to create and shoot iron balls from his knuckles. He can not only make these balls as small as eggs, which Barrows uses instead of her arrows, but Sidoro can also make them as big as his huge body. Next at number 223, we have Weld. With Weld, Yosetsu is able to combine any two materials at a subatomic level. What's crazy is that he can even weld himself with other objects and people. And he's also able to reverse the effects of his weld. Magnetism at number 224 allows Kenji to magnetize people. Once they're magnetized, the target repels or attracts each other based on their gender. Women act as a North Pole, while men act as a South Pole. This quirk doesn't affect the user or targets that are outside the 4.5 meter range. Speaking of attraction, let's talk about Love at number 225. This has to be one of the strangest quirks in MHA, because with this quirk, Manami can actually make people stronger by confessing her love to them. The more she loves the target, the stronger they'll become. Now, this would have been cool if she could spam it, but sadly, she can only use it once every 24 hours. Another quirk that boosts one's strength is Shame at number 226. Shame allows Teruo to become more powerful after they do something embarrassing. Teruo, however, activates this quirk by removing all his clothes in front of people. Similarly, at number 227, we have Physical Enhancement. That lets an unnamed pro hero enhance his physical abilities. All For One and Tamura also have some strength-related quirks. At number 228, we have Brawn Boost. Brawn Boost gives All For One a great boost in physical strength. Next at number 229 is Kinetic Booster. Kinetic Booster increases the amount of kinetic energy created and released by All For One. After that, we have Heavy Payload at number 230, which increases the damage output of Tamura's attack. Another strength boosting quirk is Charging Muscles at number 231. This quirk is similar to Bruiser as it allows Muscle Man to charge up strength in their muscles, which they can then release into one powerful blow. However, overcharging his muscles will cause him extreme muscle soreness. Did you know you can become stronger by eating sugar? Because Sugar Rush at number 232 allows Rakido to become 5 times stronger for 3 minutes for every 10 grams of sugar he eats. Now, if you like speed instead of strength, then don't worry, I got you. At number 23, we have Strong Arm. Kendo's quirk allows him to rotate and move his shoulders at a very extreme speed and power. This makes his punches so powerful that he instantly overwhelmed Fat Gum. But if you manage to hold out against those punches, then Kendo will soon get tired, since the power of this quirk can only be used for a few seconds at a time. The next quirk is even better than this because at number 234, we have Fast Fist. This allows Pro Hero Black Belt to hit 100 times in less than a second. Next, at number 235, we have Twin Impact. Narengi can cause a delayed second blow at the side of their first attack, which hits much harder than their original attack. Now, you wouldn't have to do all of that if you had Energy Suck at number 236. Rukia can suck the energy out of his opponents by simply touching them and taking a deep breath. This not only gives him more stamina, but also increases his size and strength. At number 237, we have Acid Sweat. Acid Sweat allows Masaru Bakugo to release an acidic sweat from his palms. He can also create explosions with this quirk by rubbing his hands together, but unlike his son Katsuki, he cannot release it out of his own will. However, Acid at number 238 allows Mina Ashita to create corrosive liquid from her skin out of her own will. This liquid doesn't affect her body, however, the quirk does change her body color and gives it a purple-pink color. Mina's acid is corrosive enough to melt metal objects, but that's not all, because after training her quirk to the next level, Mina made her quirk so corrosive that it actually melted Gigantomachia even though he's known for having crazy physical defense. However, if Mina uses that thing on normal humans, then they'll melt like butter. But don't worry, because Mina can also lower the intensity of this acid to make it less deadly for most living beings. She can also increase the thickness and density of this acid, which makes it so powerful that it can block incoming projectiles without any problem. Speaking of projectiles, at number 239 we have Boomerang. Boomerang allows Itsejiro Toteki to control the path of the objects he throws. However, the projectiles are not unstoppable despite being as hard as concrete and can easily be countered by Mina's acid quirk. Number 240, Scatter, allows Tamura to split up and throw multiple projectiles towards his enemy, which not only increases the strength of the attack, but also boosts its range. Next, at number 241, we have Soul. Soul is a quirk that manifests itself as a small pink bird that is always active. The bird is called Pino and is connected to Rhodey's soul. Rhodey cannot lie at all because of this quirk, because if she does, Pino will just tell everyone what she's actually thinking. Moreover, if Rhodey gets injured, Pino will also get affected by the injury, to the point that it might even become unconscious. Voyance at number 242 allows Pro Hero Clairvoyance to see through any object within her view. The only thing she cannot see are the living organisms. We also have quirks for Full Metal Alchemist fans. At number 243, we have Alchemy. Thanks to Alchemy, Valdo can turn any non-living object he touches into whatever he wants. What's cool is that the transformed object doesn't have to take a physical form, which means he can also shoot water or create powerful shockwaves strong enough to destroy several buildings from a single swipe. You might know him for having a similar face as All Might. Well, he actually created a bodysuit that changed his outward form. Now, it is obviously possible to destroy the things created from Alchemy, but what's worse is that once you knock out Valdo, everything stops functioning, and even his base, Symbol of Paradise, after he was temporarily knocked out. Somewhat similar to Alchemy is Creation at number 244. Creation allows Momo to create physical objects from his body, which she can do so by changing the structure of her fat cells. To do that, she first needs to know the object at a molecular level. Otherwise, she won't be able to create it. Which brings us to the weaknesses of this quirk. The more complex the object is, the more time it'll take Momo to create it, which is not good when your enemy is fast. Moreover, the amount of things Momo can create depends on the amount of fat she has in her body. It also depends on how large or complex the object is, since more complex and larger objects require more fat. This is why Momo has to eat lots of fats, because she will immediately get weak if she has very low fat in her body. After that, let's discuss quirks related to electricity. At number 245, we have Electrification. That allows Kaminari to store and discharge electricity out of his body as a protective aura that shocks anyone that comes in contact with it. And it also allows Kaminari to act as a lightning rod, which lets him absorb electric discharges from his enemies. However, this quirk has a few weaknesses. For starters, Electrification works better in close range. Denki has no natural way of directing his energy. Now, this issue got solved with the help of support gear that lets him use Electrification more effectively. However, even though that problem is solved, Kaminari has a wattage limit, and once he exceeds that limit, he becomes dumb for 1 whole hour. The last problem is that since it's electricity, Kaminari is useless against quirks that don't conduct electricity. Amplivolt at number 246 is a quirk that's used by a villain who's also named Amplivolt. It allows him to conduct and enhance electricity within their body, which he can release from his hands. The part I like about this quirk is the user is immune to tasers, but there is one problem. Unlike Kaminari's quirk, Amplivolt can only conduct electricity, and that's where tasers come in handy as he can use them to his advantage. Electric Charge at number 247. Electric Charge allows Tesla to collect and control electrical currents. He can either use these electrical currents to attack his opponents or jam electrical signals. At number 248, Electricity Generation allows Electplant to produce and control electricity. This sounds like Kaminari's Electrification, except unlike Electrification, Electplant can aim and shoot bolts of lightning towards his opponents. You can counter these electricity-related quirks with Earth Flow at number 249. Earth Flow allows Ryoko to control and mold the earth around her into anything she wants. She can even make monsters out of the soil and use them to attack the enemies. Similar to Earth Flow is Cement at number 250. Cement allows the pro hero Cementos to control cement-based material by simply touching the surface. However, they don't have the ability to create new cement. Next, at number 251, we have Insight. Insight turns the Koku's voice into an electromagnetic pulse. After that, when anyone who considers Koku a worthy leader hears his voice, they will get a big boost in their physical and mental state. However, the use of this quirk is limited since it only works on Koku's loyal followers. At number 252, we have Voice. Pro hero Present Mike can increase the volume of his voice to create very loud, high-pitched sounds. This sound is loud enough to destroy glass and can even blow away anything that comes in his way. After that, we have Wave Motion at number 253. Wave Motion allows Nejire to convert their stamina into energy and fire it as powerful spiral-shaped blasts. She can not only attack her opponents with these blasts, but can also use it to boost herself in the air. However, despite being very useful, these blasts don't go that fast. And since Nejire is converting her stamina, she will get tired if she overuses her quirk. You can easily send this quirk towards Nejire with Impact Recoil at number 254. Impact Recoil allows All For One to Uno reverse the attack of his opponent. However, it cannot reflect indirect attacks, which means the intense heat of Endeavor's Hellflame can affect him. Now let's talk about explosions. Landmine at number 255 allows Chitose to turn anything she touches into a landmine. Yes, this quirk also works on human beings, but the explosives created from this quirk are not very strong. Burst at number 256. Burst allows the user to explode, after which results in a very bright explosion. And no, the near high-end Nomu who use this quirk doesn't have regeneration quirk like other Nomu, so it was a one-time use. If you want something safer, then at number 257, we have Firecracker. Bomb Villain can throw parts of his hair that explode like firecrackers. However, these blasts are stronger than your normal firecrackers, as they can easily destroy buildings. If you want the best explosion quirk, then at number 258, we have Explosion. Explosion allows Bakugo to secrete a nitroglycerin-like sweat, which he can use to then create different sizes of explosions. The best part about this quirk is, the more Katsuki sweats, the more powerful his explosions will be. This means that his explosions will become more powerful the longer he fights. This changes in cold weather since he's not able to sweat more. If you've ever played Counter-Strike, you know that along with grenades, you also need flashbangs. That's why we have Flashbang Sweat at number 259. Dadan's sweat can turn into a flashbang, which creates a very bright light and loud noise on contact. If you aren't the biggest fan of bright lights, then at number 260 we have Dark Shadow. Dark Shadow gives Fumikage a shadowy monster that can come out of his body whenever Fumikage wants. It's connected to Fumikage's umbilical cord and acts as his personal guardian. Since it's a shadow, this quirk doesn't do well in light, but the darker the area is, the more powerful this quirk will be. However, when that happens, it becomes hard for Fumikage to control the shadow. The next quirk is a small spoiler, so skip to quirk number 262 if you don't want to get spoiled. At number 261, Darkness. Darkness allows Koki to create a dark substance from his fingers. Quirk number 262 is Softening. That allows Juzo to turn any solid object into semi-liquid just by touching them. It's very deadly when used on the ground, because it will effectively turn it into quicksand that will trap any poor person that gets caught in it. However, if his targets have an ability that pushes them out of the ground, then they can escape the quicksand. The complete opposite of this quirk is Stiffening at number 263. With this quirk Stiffening, Shikui can make something as soft as rubber balls, tough as concrete, to the point where they can break through solid rock if thrown with enough force. If you only want to harden your hair, Hair Razor at number 264 allows Mr. Brave to extend and harden his hair. He can then tear him off of his head to shape it into a weapon or any other tool he wants. Next at number 265 is Size. Yui can change the size of objects she has touched by pressing 5 of her fingertips together. And no, it doesn't work on living things. The complete opposite of this quirk is Compress at number 266. With this quirk, Atsuhiro Sako can shrink down anything into a small marble without actually damaging it. To activate this quirk, he has to first touch the target with his hand. Atsuhiro can undo this quirk on a single marble by simply wishing for it. As for undoing the quirk on all marbles at the same time, Atsuhiro can do so with a simple snap of his finger. At number 267, we have Elasticity. Thanks to Elasticity, Danjiro can even make steel bars elastic by simply touching them. He uses it to make trampolines on solid objects, which comes in handy to escape crime scenes. Delay Spot at number 269 allows Bruno to create a bubble-like barrier around his body. This bubble can slow everything that enters it. The only exception to this are the things that Bruno is directly touching. However, Delay Spot won't work great against attacks that are way too fast. For example, Deku was able to land a brutal hit on Bruno using Foe 100%, while Bruno was chilling inside the barrier. To make sure that doesn't happen to you, you need Erasure Spot at number 269. Paulo can create a large dome-shaped wave of energy that can deactivate the quirk of anyone within its range. But this also affects his allies, which is why he has to create a smaller bubble within to activate the quirk of his allies. However, that also has a problem because someone can easily enter that small bubble by simply dashing into it. Since we're talking about erasing quirks, we can't forget Aizawa. At number 270, we have Erasure. Aizawa can cancel out the quirk of anyone he takes a look at. However, he can only do that as long as he doesn't close his eyes. Sorry. This means that as long as you're completely hiding behind someone, or fast enough to sneak behind Aizawa, you're fine. One more drawback of Erasure is that it only works on emitter and transformation quirks, which means people that have mutant quirks are safe from Aizawa's deadly eyes. In those cases, you'll need Enfeeble at number 271. With Enfeeble, Habuko can paralyze the muscles of her opponents for 3 seconds by simply looking at them. She can paralyze multiple opponents as long as they're all making eye contact. The next quirk takes erasing to the next level. At number 272, we have Rewind. Because Eri allows him to reverse somebody's body back to its previous state, this means that she can not only heal people, but she can also revert them to a state where they either didn't have their quirk or it wasn't developed. And to make things worse, this quirk used to have one big problem. Because Eri didn't know how to control her quirk, instead of reverting someone to their non-injured state, Eri would reverse their whole life and literally erase them from existence. Speaking of erasing from existence, Overhaul at number 273 allows Chizaki to instantly disassemble and then reassemble matter with his bare hands. That means he can kill a person by just touching them. He can also combine 2 different objects or beings into one single being. He can even fuse with other people and use their quirks without any problem. He can also heal a person by reconstructing them to a biologically perfect state. If instead of erasing you want to boost your quirk, then you'd like Over Modification at number 274. Then you'd like Overmodification at number 274. Overmodification can boost the quirk of a target if they're compatible with the user by touching them. This not only boosts the base abilities, but can also give them new abilities if they make enough contact with the user. If someone is incompatible with the user, Ana Cervino, then they will receive an immense pain that will knock them out. And what makes this more dangerous is that you don't know if you're compatible until you try it. Another major drawback of this quirk is always active, which means that if you touch Ana and you turn out to be incompatible, then get ready to receive great pain. Along with that, this quirk has another side effect. Ana has to release a certain amount of her quirk regularly. If she doesn't, it'll turn against her body and give her painful seizures that can only be turned off by the next quirk that we have at number 275, Neutralization. Giulio Gandini can temporarily cancel a target's quirk by touching. This quirk is activated from the right arm of the user and was very important for controlling Ana's seizures. But the best part is, Ana's quirk also boosted Neutralization. This not only allowed Giulio Gandini to use Neutralization from his left arm, but it also permanently cancels Ana's Overmodification and made her quirkless. Next, at number 276, we have Forced Quirk Activation. Through Forced Quirk Activation, All For One can activate someone's quirk against their will. It doesn't matter if the target is conscious or not, the quirk will work no matter what. And just like Toga's quirk, All For One must know how the quirk works before he uses it. At number 277, we have Teleportation. Teleportation can make Gil or whatever he touches teleport to a location that he can directly see. Warping at number 278 allows the user to create a black liquid from someone's mouth. The black liquid then covers the person's entire body and sends them to an entirely different location. Similarly, Warp Gate at number 279 allows Kurogiri to create a dark fog that acts as a portal. This fog transports anything that touches it to a nearby location, and if Kurogiri closes the quirk while someone is passing through the warp gate, then that person would get cut in half. However, unlike warping, Kurogiri has to know the exact location of where he wants to open the portal. He only needs the exact location to open a portal in areas he cannot see. This is why Kurogiri cannot search for his missing comrades. And while the next quirk won't send you where you want, it will send you high up in the air. At number 280, we have Zero Gravity. Zero Gravity allows Ochako to remove the effects of gravity from solid things by touching them with the pads on their fingertips. Ochako can make anything solid float in midair as long as they weigh around 3 tons. She was able to awaken her quirk during the final war. After that, Ochako didn't have to touch every single object to activate her quirk. Instead, anti-gravity could now spread between objects once they touch each other. Ochako's awakening also removed her weight limit and allowed her to put things down slowly without pressing her fingers. She also gained the ability to make floating bubbles that cause anything they touch to rise, which means that she no longer had to touch the objects herself. Now let's talk about the quirks of one of the strongest characters in My Hero Academia, Gigantomachia. At number 281, we have Pain Blocker. Pain Blocker makes Gigantomachia unable to feel any pain both inside and outside their body. Gigantomachia uses this quirk alongside Endurance, and with both combined, he can even shrug off Dabi's blue flames. You will know how hot these flames are in a minute. At number 282, Energy Saver. Thanks to this quirk, Gigantomachia can function on very little amounts of food, water, and sleep. To give an example, he can fight for 2 days straight with only 3 hours of sleep. The next quirk we have also plays a role in this. At number 238, Endurance. Because Endurance converts Gigantomachia's morale and excitement into physical energy and turns him into a stamina beast, we're left with only 32 more quirks. At number 284, we have Hard Flame Fan. Hard Flame Fan lets All For One create a wall of fire to cover a part of their body to defend themselves. He can create multiple layers of this wall, but if there's fire that is hotter than the fire generated by this quirk, like Endeavor's Flame, then they will easily pass through this quirk. And that's what we have at number 285, Hellflame. Hellflame allows Endeavor to generate and control intense and powerful flames that can also turn blue. Despite coating himself in flame, you might think Endeavor is immune to fire. No, he is not immune to heat. Hellflame raises Endeavor's body temperature to dangerous levels, to the point that he needs the help of other heroes to cool him down with fire hoses. The best quirk for that is Frost at number 286. Frost allows the user to create and control ice around their body. It's used by Rei Todoroki and her children Fuyumi and Natsuo. Using this quirk for a long time will cause frostbites throughout Rei's body, and it might even cause hypothermia. When you combine these two quirks, you get Half Cold, Half Hot at number 287. Half Cold, Half Hot allows Shoto Todoroki to create ice with their right side and fire with their left. It is the fusion of his father's quirk Hellflame and his mother's quirk Frost. At first, Shoto wasn't able to use both sides, but after enough training, he not only became able to use both sides, but also created a cold fire. Yes, a cold fire that burns and freezes the opponents at the same time. But what happens if the result of quirk marriage harms the child instead? Then you get Blue Flame at number 288. Blue Flame allows Dabi to create blue-colored flames that are much hotter than Flame Hero Endeavor's quirk. These flames burn at a crazy temperature of at least 2,000 degrees Celsius, which for my US audience is around 3,600 Fahrenheit. And to give you an idea of how hot it is, this blue flame is even hotter than lava. And something strange happened with Dabi when he was about to die. Blue flames increased so much that it created a new ability, Frost, which is similar to his mother's quirk. This made Blue Flame become a similar quirk to Half Cold, Half Hot. As I mentioned before, despite it being such a cool quirk, Blue Flame actually harmed Dabi. Dabi's body was not able to handle the heat because he inherited his mother's genes, which instead of giving resistance to high temperature, makes one resistant to freezing temperatures. This is exactly why when Dabi abused his quirk during the final war, he roasted himself so badly that parts of his body crumbled away. Next, we have a quirk that was able to resist Dabi's flames. At number 289, Ice Ply. Ice Ply allows Getten to control any ice around him. He can not only use it to attack his opponents by sending ice shards towards them, but he can also move and defend himself with this ice. After awakening his quirk, Getten also became able to control the temperature of the ice. This means that while he cannot create ice, he can instead turn water into ice, which in return adds more ice in his arsenal. This ice is so cold that it can even temporarily withstand Dabi's blue flames. Chart. Chart lets Kashiko create a holographic page that lets her track and detect enemies. She can also find out if her enemies are alive. At number 289, we have Scanning. Scanning allows Nine to search for and identify the quirks of people. He can also measure their energy level, just like a thermal camera measures the temperature. Let's discuss all the quirks of the villain Nine. Next, at number 292, we have Air Wall. It allows Nine to create circular shields made of compressed air from his hands. These air barriers are strong enough to block Izuku's Delaware Smash Air Force. What's crazy is that Nine can layer other barriers on top of each other to create a dome barrier that helps him guard against attacks that are coming from different areas. Nine can also use the shield to blast away his opponents. And even better, fire powerful bursts of pressurized air to knock and stun his enemies. But Nine has an even more powerful quirk. At number 293, we have Hydra. Nine can summon a giant shark-like snake from his back, which is huge enough to crush a person in its jaws. Nine usually summons one single snake, which can split in two when attacked. However, after using the boost, Nine was able to summon multiple snake heads out of his back. But this quirk isn't cooler than the one we have at number 294. Bullet Laser allows Nine to fire purple-colored lasers from his fingertips. He can either shoot them as direct blasts, or he can also curve them straight from his fingers. These lasers can easily pierce through flesh, and can even destroy an entire house and large boulders without any problem. What makes these lasers more dangerous is the fact that they explode upon contact. Now, if we're talking the most deadly quirk in Nine's arsenal, then there's no doubt that it's Weather Manipulation at number 295. Nine's weather manipulation allows him to control all types of weather, to the point that he can create storms that are large enough to cover entire islands. He can even summon lightning bolts and create huge tornadoes without any problem. However, it puts a great amount of pressure on his body. The pain he experiences from using this quirk is so intense that it can even cause him to faint. Next, at number 296, Dark Ball. Dark Ball allows All For One to release a large number of black balls. He combined this quirk with some other quirks to blast All Might through several buildings. At number 297, we have Black Hole. This has got to be one of the coolest quirks of My Hero Academia because it lets Pro Hero 13 create black holes through his fingers, which can destroy anything at the atomic level. This comes in handy for capturing enemies that are escaping from her range. But she has to be very careful about it, because if there's a quirk that can Uno Reverse 13's quirk onto her, then she too will be destroyed by it. However, surviving Black Hole is not impossible if she only gets exposed to it for a short time. Now, I will tell you about the most broken quirk in My Hero Academia. At number 289, we have New Order. This is a little complex, so let me make it easy for you. New Order allows Star and Stripe to create a new rule for her surroundings. This only happens after she touches the target and calls out their name. After this, she can add new properties onto herself and her surroundings. This means that not only can she give herself additional abilities, but she can also control the condition of her opponent's body. And it isn't limited to physical things, because Star and Stripe can also affect air, laser beams, and even add new rules to the quirks. Let me tell you something more crazy. She can even add rules on the New Order itself. However, there is a limit to how strong she can make herself. It isn't possible for Star and Stripe to make her invincible, because she can only implement 2 rules at one time. This quirk eventually got stolen by Tamora, but before he could steal her quirk, Star and Stripe set a new rule: that New Order will rebel against other quirks. This destroyed the quirks inside Tamora's body, which also caused New Order to self-destruct and left Tamora heavily injured. However, he wouldn't have gotten injured if he had Foresight at number 299. Thanks to Foresight, Sir Night-Eye can accurately predict all future movements of his targets for 1 hour. To do that, he has to touch and make eye contact with his target, after which he will see his target's future from a third-person perspective. There is no limit to how far he can see in the future, since he was able to predict years ahead. But even if he can see an event, Sir Night-Eye cannot tell the exact date of when it'll happen. He also cannot hear any conversations in the future, and once activated, Night-Eye won't be able to use this technique for 24 hours. Let's now talk about a quirk that All For One didn't steal because it was too hard to control it. At number 300, we have Fiber Master. Pro Hero Best Jeanist can control all types of cloth fibers. Thanks to this quirk, Best Jeanist can easily capture any enemy, as long as they're wearing clothes. However, he has to be focused while he's using his quirk, because once he gets distracted, he will lose control of the fibers. Only 15 more quirks to go, which means that it's the perfect time to discuss the quirks of the previous users of One For All. At number 301, we have Float. This quirk is very similar to Airwalk, since it also allows the user to float and suspend themselves in midair. It was originally used by the 7th user of One For All, Nana Shimura. At number 302, we have Black Whip. This quirk allows Daigoro to produce energy tendrils from any part of his body, which he can then command at will. Along with Black Hole, this quirk is one of the best quirks to capture enemies. One more interesting fact about Black Whip is that its power is linked to emotions, especially anger, which means the more angry the user gets, the stronger the Black Whip will be. At number 303, we have Danger Sense. It's exactly as it sounds. Danger Sense not only allows its user to detect any threat in his surroundings, but also causes them to react to it. With this quirk, Hikage and Izuku can sense someone's intentions or negative emotions. But even though it sounds overpowered, it takes a lot of toll on the user's body. Moreover, it's also possible to overwhelm the user by hitting them with insanely fast attacks. And since it detects negative emotions, Toga was able to catch Izuku off guard because she attacked him out of love. Next, we have the quirk of the 4th user of One For All. At number 304, Smokescreen. Smokescreen allows Entei and Midoriya to create thick clouds of purple smoke from their body. Midoriya uses it to catch their opponents by surprise. After that, we have Fajin at number 305. Bruce Lee can charge up energy by repeating movements, which he can later release to get an insane gain in both speed and power. The best part is that this stored energy can also be applied to other quirks like Black Whip, which can create a chain strong enough to capture powerful opponents. Gear Shift at number 306 allows Kudo to change how fast things move in space, without worrying about the physics. At first, Kudo was only able to use this quirk on small objects, but by the time it reached Midoriya through One For All, it became so overpowered that it was difficult to control this quirk, and he could only use it for 5 minutes. We have only 8 quirks remaining, so let's talk about the remaining quirks of Tamora and All For One. At number 307, we have Air Cannon. Air Cannon allows the user to release a devastating shockwave of air pressure from the palm of their hands. The user can also change the shape of the blast from a straight concentrated air shot to a wide air blade. This quirk was used by All For One, who later gave it to Tamura. Next, we have Reflect at number 308. This quirk is used by Flecturn and Tamura, both of which have a slight difference. Flecturn's Reflect allows him to absorb energy and release it back in the opposite direction. He uses this to counter both physical and ranged attacks, which makes it difficult to harm him. However, reflecting an attack drains stamina, and the stronger the attack, the more he will run out of stamina, which is why he wasn't able to handle Deku's punches and got cooked by his United States World Smash. Tamura's Reflect, on the other hand, allows him to copy and recreate any attack thrown at him. He can absorb multiple attacks at the same time, but he can only release it in one direction. Then we have another broken search quirk. At number 309, search allows the user to monitor and search up to 100 people at a time. Not only do you learn about the location of your targets, but you can also find out their weak points. It even permanently stores the location you have gathered after you have used the quirk. However, even this quirk has a weakness, and that weakness is a spoiler, so anime onlys can move on to the next quirk, because this quirk specifically targets the quirk factor and DNA of a person. Tamura thought he detected Midoriya and attacked him, only to realize that it was actually Kudo's blood he detected on Midoriya's cape. Now, the most deadly quirk in Tamura's arsenal has got to be Decay at number 310. Decay allows the user to reduce anything to dust by just touching them. If Tamura activates this quirk while touching, then it's game over for you. Unless you cut the decaying part before it affects the whole body, or you are extremely lucky and Eraserhead is there to save you. This quirk is so destructive that it can even damage the user when it's used at full power. Next, at number 311, we have Impure Beam. Impure Beam allows All For One to release a large and destructive beam of light. It is one of the strongest quirks All For One has, since a single use of this quirk can cause a mass destruction. And finally, we get to the real deal. At number 312, we have All For One. All For One can steal quirks from anyone he wants by simply touching them. He can then either use those quirks or transfer them to other people. All For One can also combine and use different quirks at the same time, like he did in Chapter 93 while fighting All Might. One more interesting thing is that the user of All For One forms a mental link with its previous user. This is exactly why Tamura's personality becomes somewhat similar to his master, All For One. After receiving the quirk, Tamura also became able to meet with his master in his mind. But despite being such a strong quirk, it has some limitations. Not anyone can handle this quirk, because having more than one quirk in your body can put you in a brain-dead state. And I know it said it lets you steal all the quirks in existence, but there is one and only one exception to this rule, and that's One For All. At number 313, we have Quirk Bestowal. This quirk literally has only one function: to give it to someone else. And you can only pass this quirk to another person through DNA. For example, Midoriya got this quirk from All Might by swallowing his hair. The best part is, it can only be transferred to another person if the user wants it, and that is exactly why it is the only known quirk that can be stolen by All For One. At number 314, we have Power Stock. This quirk was given to Yoichi by his brother All For One, which he then fused with Quirk Bestowal to create One For All. Power Stock lets Yoichi stock power over time. Combined with the fact that he can transfer his power to future generations, this quirk became so epic that All Might became the undisputed strongest person in the world and defeated All For One. And by the time it reached Midoriya, the power became so intense that Midoriya had to learn how to control such an immense power without injuring himself. These two quirks, when combined, became One For All. One For All's main ability is to stock an enormous amount of raw power and enhance the user's physical abilities to superhuman levels. For example, even though All Might lost his internal organs, his punches at 100% output had enough oomph to change the weather. The user can either focus this huge energy on a specific part of his body or spread it evenly throughout their body. Along with the power, One For All carried vestiges or traces of all the previous users. And just like All For One, the previous users of One For All could interact with the current user. In Izuku's case, the previous users manifested as spirits to give him advice on how to use their personal quirks. One more interesting thing about One For All is it gets stronger after hearing the cries of those in need. It acts as a direct order of the user of One For All and slightly changes his body. In All Might's case, it made him bulkier to the point he looked like a completely different person. As for Izuku, One For All caused his body to glow, with vein-like structures appearing across his body. However, with great power comes great risk. If the body of the person who's receiving One For All is not ready for it, then it will literally blow them up. This is exactly why Izuku had to go through intense training before even receiving the quirk. And even after he received the quirk, he had to adjust to One For All and continued his rigorous training to handle the great power. Even then, Izuku had to be very careful with his power because he would always end up with broken limbs whenever he didn't use it carefully.